I argued in another video that every time travel rule a writer adds is a promise to the audience. Break one and the whole story leaks. There is exactly one film that wrote its rules so carefully it never had to break a single one. And the way it pulled that off is so simple you've probably watched it without realizing what you were looking at. But to understand how a movie can solve the problem, we have to talk about what the time power problem actually is. It's a 30-second recap for those who haven't watched my other video. It starts with the writer making rules behind their power, then breaking them without noticing it. Endgame promised you that going back doesn't change your present, then closed with Steve Rogers showing up as an old man on a bench.
Hi, Sam.
The Flash spent 9 seasons writing rules and breaking them inside the same season. Even the films that don't have a rules problem on the surface usually got there by just stripping the power down to almost nothing. The genre's solution is to make the power small enough that the rules stay easy to keep. Edge of Tomorrow makes Tom Cruise pay for every reset by dying horribly on screen until you forget he's rich and feel sorry for him. I mean, it works, but it works because the power is barely a power anymore. Time is beating him to death and the undoing barely matters. So you could see the puzzle now. To solve the time travel problem properly, you'd need to do 2 things at once. Keep the power big so it actually feels like a power, and keep every single rule so the audience never catches the writer cheating. Nobody has done both. Every film that tries is either the first thing or the second thing. Never both, except one. Doctor Strange gives its hero the strongest version of the ability anyone has ever put on screen. He can rewind any moment by hand and replay it as many times as he wants. Nobody ever takes the ability away from him, and nothing ever stops him from using it. Or do they? I mean, the man is functionally a god. There's a scene early in the first film where he eats half an apple, then does some sick magic tricks and throws gang signs with his fingers, watches the apple eat itself away further and rot. Then uneat itself bite by bite back to whole on the table. Wong walks in and tells him to put it down before he tears reality apart. The film is showing you the scale of this power by having a man wasted on fruit. A cosmic level party trick I would use to impress one of the hot single moms in your area. Back to time powers, though. Strange shows up in Infinity War wearing the Time Stone, which should just break the whole story, really. He's the most powerful character in any fight he's in. When Thanos does beat him, the audience should be sitting there waiting for the rewind. But the rewind never comes. He gives Thanos the stone. Later in the movie, Strange dies with half the world alongside him, and you walk out of the theater upset even though there was no undo button right there the whole time. That should not work. It does, but not because Strange saw those 14 million futures and the only one they won in was the one where he handed over the stone to save Iron Man. It's because of something different. We'll get back on this part later and continue it. To understand everything on a deeper level, we have to go back to the very first scene where something was established that the audience never consciously thinks about. A promise a different film made to you before Strange even existed, which was a big reason Strange even works. The film opens with a librarian getting beheaded for guarding a book. Before you've even met Strange, the film has shown you what happens when somebody crosses the rules of magic. Holy crap, Harry Potter would be so much cooler if they did this. The librarian gets cut down by a man wearing 2 curved blades. The ancient one shows up, but she's already too late. The pages are gone, the librarian is X'd out of existence, and the film has made a promise to you in the first 60 seconds. Magic exists, it has rules, and breaking them gets people killed. Now keep that in your head as the film slowly walks Strange through the door. By the time he gets close to the Time Stone, you've already been shown 3 times what messing with magic actually costs. And each one of those moments is doing structural work for the time travel problem the film is going to solve later. The first piece is the Eye of Agamotto, which is a necklace. Yeah. Strange wears it around his neck and the power lives inside the object. He has to physically pick it up, put it on, and channel it by throwing around gang signs with his hands. Take the necklace off, the power is gone. Forget the gang signs, nothing happens. You can see the writers building the off switch. The eye is the containment. Compare that to the Flash, where Barry just has the power because he was struck by lightning. There is no off switch. There is no object you can take from him. He shows up whenever and the power is just there. Doctor Strange handed itself an undo button on its own time powers by making them something you could physically lose. Secondly, there's Mordo, and Mordo is the character a lot of people forgot did the actual heavy lifting in the first film. Love him or hate him, but Mordo is the one who keeps walking around saying things like, "The bill comes due, always."
You still think there will be no consequences, Strange? The bill comes due.
Always. Every time Strange uses magic, Mordo is somewhere in the background reminding you that this is going to cause something eventually. Which strangely, no pun intended, reminds me of the Netflix show The Order, where they also use magic. But if you don't pay the price for using magic, somewhere someone does? This is definitely an unpopular take, but I like that show. Roast me all you want for it. Ha! Back to Doctor Strange, though. The film is using a character to install the cost into the world building. By the third act, when Strange uses the eye to put Hong Kong back together, the audience is already braced for a price. They've been told for 90 minutes that messing messing with this stuff has consequences. So when Mordo eventually walks away from the Masters of the Mystic Arts in disgust because Strange broke the rules, you understand it. You don't need a 5-minute explanation. The cost was promised in Act 1 and collected in the end. Third and last is the Ancient One, and she's the easiest piece to miss. She knows when she dies. She is known for years. She tells Strange in her dying moments that she stretched her time as long as she could, but she always knew it would end this way. And she chose not to use the eye to change it. That is the writers handing you the moral rule for the entire franchise. You can see your future. You don't get to change it. You get to do something with it, which I'll reveal later. Strange watches the most powerful sorcerer in the world choose to die rather than rewrite her own ending. He inherits her power. He also inherits her restraint. Before he ever uses the Time Stone, the film has shown him and shown you what the right answer is when you're tempted. So now you have 3 things stacked on top of each other before the time travel problem arrives. An object that can be lost, a character constantly warning about the cost, and the most powerful sorcerer in the world choosing to die rather than rewrite her ending. That's why the trick works. The rules around the power are heavy, which brings us all the way back to when we see the time power in action again, with real stakes. Strange flies into the Dark Dimension, which is Dormammu's home, and Dormammu is the entity the entire film has been building toward. Dormammu is a god the size of a planet made out of fire and rock, stuff warping around his face. It doesn't matter. What matters is he's about to swallow Earth into his dimension. There is no version of this fight where Strange wins. He shows up alone with a small leather satchel and gets killed within seconds of arriving. Then he's back. Same place, same moment. He looks up at Dormammu and says,
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
Dormammu, who just murdered him, looks down, confused. Then he kills him again. The scene cuts. He's back, same line. Dormammu, I've come to bargain. Dormammu kills him a different way this time. Cut. Back. The deaths start running together. Crushed, impaled, burned, smashed. Dormammu varies the method just to see if any of them stick. None of them stick. Every time the screen comes back, Strange is there alive saying the same 5 words. Now, Dormammu is paying attention. His expression shifts from amusement to something that looks a lot like fear? I don't know. I can't read gods.
You cannot do this forever.
And Strange says he can. This is the moment the film is earned. If you look at what Strange has just done with the most overpowered version of time travel anyone has ever put on screen, you begin to sense it. What he just did is the opposite of every other use of time powers in any film. He used the Time Stone to lock himself inside the worst possible moment of his life on permanent repeat with a god dying. Endgame would have just used the stone to undo Dormammu's invasion before it started. The Flash would have used it to win the fight directly. Maybe create another reverse Flash and another 2 seasons. No! Doctor Strange used it to suffer until the god in front of him got tired of killing him, and it worked because the audience already knew the rules. The eye is the necklace from Act 2, the off switch the writers built. It's what makes the loop physically possible. Without the Time Stone in his hands, he can't repeat the moment. Mordo running around warning that the bill comes due is what makes Strange's choice feel like a choice. Every loop costs him another death. He's paying with eternity. And the Ancient One's death is the model he just inverted. She refused to change her ending. He refuses to leave his. 3 layers of containment. One scene where they all click into place, the film keeps the rules intact and gives its hero the strongest version of the power, and it uses that power to take the loss in front of him. Strange beats a god by becoming the punishment. So that's the first film. The question now is whether this was a one-off trick or whether the writers actually understood what they had built. Because a lot of franchises stumble into a clever moment and then never figure out how to repeat it. The MCU could have used the Time Stone in Infinity War like Endgame eventually used time travel. Just an undo button for a bad situation. They didn't, and for that we have to go back to the fight with Thanos. Strange shows up on Titan with a stone around his neck. He floats cross-legged for some reason and uses it to do something the audience hasn't seen before. He looks forward. Specifically, he looks at every possible future he can reach. Every vision of the fight that's about to happen. Every version of what comes after, which took him over 5,000 years according to Reddit. When he opens his eyes, Tony Stark asks him how many they win. Strange says 1. Out of 14,605,000. Whoa, that's a lot of L's. Later, the fight starts. Strange fights Thanos. He has the Time Stone. He never uses it to rewind a single moment. Strange fights with magic and gets thrown around like everyone else. The audience never asks why he doesn't just rewind, because the audience already learned the rules in the first film. Strange uses the time power for one thing only. He uses it to watch, and he knows that to get that one outcome where they win, he has to do something particular. When Thanos has Tony at his mercy, Strange watches, then materializes. materializes. Is that the right way to call it? Well, he Houdini tricks the Time Stone into existence and hands it to Thanos, effectively handing over the most overpowered weapon in the universe to the single dad with a genocide plan in exchange for the life of one man. Tony on the ground asks why. Strange says,
We're in the endgame now.
but Strange knows that the one outcome where they win, he needs Tony. This is the same trick as Dormammu, just scaled up. Strange has all the power. He chooses the worst feeling option in front of him because he's already seen it leads to the only future that works. Strange takes the loss. Half the universe dies in the next 10 minutes. Strange disintegrates. The film ends, and the audience walks out devastated. Even though the most powerful character in the room could have rewound. Wait, rewind? Rewound it? I don't know. Reverse the whole thing. That should not work. Most films would have collapsed under that contradiction in 5 seconds. The Time Stone would have become a plot hole the second the audience left the theater. But it doesn't, because the writers trained you for 2 films to expect Strange to use the power the way the Ancient One did, to choose his own ending. That is the proof that the first film wasn't an accident. The writers actually understood the trick they had built. They did it twice, in 2 different films, on stakes that scaled from one wizard versus one god, all the way up to half the universe versus one purple grape. Both times it worked for the same reason. The audience knew the rules. Oh, and they still messed it up. Endgame needs to undo the snap, and the only available tool is time travel. The writers don't have Doctor Strange's discipline to lean on anymore. They need full-scale time travel as a plot mechanism, so they rip the door open. Hulk gets a 5-minute scene explaining branching timelines like he's giving a fucking TED Talk. The film promises you that going back doesn't change your present, then ends with Steve Rogers showing up as an old man on a bench in a way that breaks the rule the film just established. Within a single movie, the writers wrote the rules and broke them. I've explained that line like 3 or 4 times in videos now. Wow, I need to get more creative. Then Loki happens. The entire show exists because Endgame opened a door the writers couldn't close. They had to invert a literal bureaucracy of time cops, the Time Variance Authority, just to police the timeline mess they created. An entire institution of characters whose only job is managing the contradictions that Doctor Strange handled in the first film, with one mortal speech and a necklace. Loki spends 2 seasons cleaning up after Endgame. That's how big the gap is between writing time travel carefully and writing it loose. And nobody likes anything loose. Okay, sorry. And by the time Strange comes back in Multiverse of Madness, the Time Stone is gone. The eye on his neck has nothing in it. He uses other magic systems entirely. Things like dream walking, the Darkhold, multiverse travel. The franchise, without ever announcing it, quietly took the time travel toy out of his hands, almost like the writers knew the discipline that made the first film work was too delicate to keep doing. This is the weight of what Doctor Strange actually pulled off. The trick worked because every part of it was tight. The eye, the cost, the Ancient One, the restraint. Take any one of those out and the whole thing leaks. The MCU has been demonstrating that for 5 years now. And it works because you could draw a parallel between Doctor Strange and Stephen Strange. Stephen Strange, the man before he becomes a sorcerer, is a neurosurgeon. The opening of the first film is him showing off how much better he is than others at his job and like guessing songs and stuff. Strange's whole personality is the refusal to lose. He's obsessive and also a little arrogant about how good he is. His superpower before the magic is control. Then he crashes his car off a cliff and destroys his hands. The film spends some runtime showing him refuse to accept that. He drains his bank account on experimental surgeries that don't work. He lashes out at Christine, and by the time he flies to Nepal, he's still chasing a fix for his hands, chasing that dragon, don't even know what magic is yet. What the Ancient One teaches him, and what Mordo keeps trying to make him understand, is that the price of using magic is giving up the illusion that you can't fix everything. That is also exactly what the film's solution to time travel is. Don't try to fix everything. Take the loss in front of you. So when Strange traps himself in the loop with Dormammu when he hands the Time Stone to Thanos, what you're actually watching is a man who used to refuse to lose, accepting 2 of the worst losses of his life on purpose. The character arc and the writing solution are the same arc. The film about the doctor who couldn't accept failure is also the film that solved time travel by teaching its hero to accept it. That's why it works! The writers cracked the time problem by giving the time power to the one character whose entire arc was about learning to stop using it. The clever rule was the character himself. But there is an even bigger rule that sits above Doctor Strange. It's Batman's no-kill rule, though it has been solved. Should Batman kill? Click here to find out.